Hey everybody, welcome back to TìandTarot, or welcome to TìandTarot if you've not been here before. Said that in reverse. Anyway, welcome to part 4 of the Symbolism in Tarot series. It's probably going to be more parts to this because I think I'm like halfway through. But yeah, once again we're just going over some symbols in tarot, comparing these across 3 decks, one being the most traditional deck that I have and the other 2 being very alternative, so that I can show you where these symbols can turn up or not turn up in the cards and how that changes your interpretation of them. So with that being said, let's get into the video. Hope you enjoy. Bye. Okay, so the next symbol we're going to be talking about is chains, and chains only crop up in one card in the tarot deck, which is the Devil card, and we can see here the chains tying these 2 skeletons together. We can see here that this person is chained to their like vices, so they like drinking, they like smoking, drugs, things like that. So this is an emphasis on the toxicity that someone might be chained to, whereas over here in this deck we're seeing an absence of the chains. So what do the chains represent? Of course, chains represent restriction, because if you're chained up you can't really move, can't really do anything, and you're at the mercy of whoever has chained you. So there's also limitations, binding ties as well, binding people together. So these 2 people have been bound together for some reason, maybe because they're both toxic for each other, and that's why that chain is there, because they can't seem to pull away from that toxicity. Because usually chains are representative of this not being a good thing. You know, it's not a good thing to be chained up, so it's something you kind of need to break free from. So it can also represent breaking free from constraints. So for example, this person here needs to break free from their smoking habits, from their drinking habits, because these aren't good for them. So this might be a hard task to overcome, a hard habit to get rid of, whereas over here with the absence of chains, maybe this isn't a hard thing to get over for this person, maybe it's quite easy. Okay, our next symbol is the symbol of the child or children. So this comes up in 3 tarot cards, so the Sun, the 10 of Coins, and the 6 of Cups. As I said, you know, symbols can cross over into other cards because each deck is different, but traditionally it would just be these 3 cards. And that is for several reasons, because children of course represent that kind of youthful, young, fun energy, that innocence, you know, the fact that, you know, they're new to life, so they kind of represent new beginnings, the potential of who they'll become, so they represent potential. They have like pure spirits because they're just brand new and they've been like unblemished by the world, so they represent that as well. And the promise of growth as well, you know, who they're going to grow into. The fact that that growth is kind of inevitable. So that is why the image of a child comes up in these 3 cards. Because with the Sun card, this is obviously a really good card, a success card of new beginnings, of potential, of the future, growing, improving, just going further and further into greatness. And so that's kind of the inevitable growth there, which is where the children come in. But on top of that, it's also like with the Sun card, you don't get to that good place by being like sneaky, or, you know, you're a very like innocent, pure, intentioned, like authentic version of yourself. Very good, very happy, very joyous, very bubbly. And that's where that innocence kind of comes in as well. Next up we have the 10 of Coins. So the reason why children kind of come up here usually is because this card is about generations and inheritance and passing things down through the generations. So usually children are like a sign of like this continued prosperity through generations in this card. And because the 6 of Cups is about like innocence, joy, nostalgia, that's why children tend to come up in this card as well. So they have represented a child through having like a miniature ghost here. And then over here, these are the beginnings of plants, just the start of them. And then over here, there's a child here. And I think that's also supposed to be a child. But this is to represent, so nostalgia, of course, that feeling of familiarity, looking on the past, feeling fond of it, feeling connected to it. A sense of being reminded of your childhood. So that's why children are used here. But also that joy and that innocence as well. So that's why they're connected to these cards. Okay, so our next symbol is circles. The symbol of the circle crops up in 3 cups in the tarot. So we have the Ace of Cups, the Wheel of Fortune, and the World card. Of course, circles are a continuous cycle. They're also a sense of completion and also a sense of infinality as well. So it's something just being permanent, continuing in the same direction. They can also represent wholeness and unity. So as I said, also the cycles repeating themselves, completion, infinite existence, that sort of thing. And that's why we have this in the Ace of Cups, because as you can also see with the continuous flow of water, this is kind of saying there's a continuous flow of love. There will always be an abundance of love. It never runs out. There will always be an abundance of the self as well. So that's why we've got the little circle here that the bird is delivering. This one has a little eye in it. And over here we've got a heart instead of a circle. Kind of going rogue with the symbols there. And if we take a look at the Wheel of Fortune, which is called Fate in the Cute Ghost Tarot, the big old circle is right there in the middle with this like sort of medallion style compass. So this is in the Wheel of Fortune representing cycles more than anything, because the Wheel of Fortune is about cycles continuing, your luck changing, and then when someone starts to spin this wheel and it starts to turn, your luck is changing and the cycle is changing its pattern. So it can go one way or it can go the other way. You can have good luck, you can have bad luck, you can have unexpected things and more fixed things as well. It's all about the phases of life, really, and phases of your life. And the circle here more so represents completion and infinite possibilities, along with, in the Wheel of Fortune, infinite possibilities as well. But there's like a circle of like a, what's this called? A garland, kind of. Although this is, I think, supposed to be a snake. But this is like a garland here. And it's supposed to represent the fact that you've completed something. This is the end of the journey. But there are lots of new possibilities waiting for you. New cycles to complete. There's an infinite existence to this process and this success, and you have a sense of wholeness as well. So this really sums up almost all of the symbols of the circle. Okay, so our next symbol is going to be clouds, and this comes up in so many tarot cards. So clouds come up in the Wheel of Fortune, the Tower, the Lovers, and the Judgment from the Major Arcana. And from the Minor Arcana, it comes up in the Ace of Wands, the Ace of Cups, the Four of Cups, the Seven of Cups, the Ace of Swords, the Three of Swords, the Five of Swords, the Page of Swords, the Knight of Swords, the Queen of Swords, the King of Swords, and the Ace of Coins. Whew! Once I've got that out of the way, let me just neaten these back up, because there was no way I was going to remember all of this. Yeah, so that's all the cards that the clouds come up in, but of course all decks are different. Check out yours, see where they come up, but traditionally that's where they come up. And this is because clouds have quite what they represent, the symbol they represent, can be applicable to so many different things, because it's quite a like broad kind of definition, because clouds can represent mystery. You know, you can't see what's going on behind the other side of the clouds, so you know, mystery. Also intuition, feeling like tuned in, because it's connected to the divine. There's like divine influence behind clouds, so it can represent your intuition connecting with that. Then guidance from like higher realms as well because of that. And then also the short nature of life, because clouds kind of come and go and move on and evaporate and respawn. So it also represents that as well. So the clouds here in the Wheel of Fortune, they represent the mystery around what you're going to kind of get, whether you're going to get divine guidance, whether you're going to get intuition, whether you're going to get good or bad things on this journey. So it very much encompasses that mystery and intuition and divine guidance, as well as short natures, because the change you can get in the Wheel of Fortune can be short. So the Tower card is, once again, all of the clouds in the Tower card in the background there. They can represent that mystery, not knowing what's next, and this change and chaos being a part of your divine purpose. So for example, let's say you got kicked out of your flat share with your roommates, but even though that's chaotic and stressful and you had to go somewhere else, it was divinely meant for you so that you could go to that new location and find that like dream job, or, you know, find a new group of people that you really aligned with better. So it's like that. The clouds are representing that mystery as well as that divine influence and guidance from higher realms when it comes to the Tower card. In the Lovers, the clouds are like that dreamy mysteryness. It's like the kind of the allure between you and this other person, but clouds are also the short nature of kind of lust, and then that more long term of love, and also being guided by the higher realms, which is why we also have the figure in the Lovers at the top in the clouds. So when we've got Judgment with the clouds, what we're kind of seeing is divine guidance once again, because the people are being spoken to by this angel with the trumpet. So once again, we're getting that divine guidance. With the Ace of Wands, this is a little bit of mystery as well as divine connection, because the wand kind of pointing up is connecting you to the divine. The clouds in the Ace of Cups are once again doing the same thing. It's giving a sense of mystery of what's next, as well as divine influence here and intuition, feeling connected, feeling the love, you know. This very much in the Four of Cups, this mysterious cup coming out of nowhere from a cloud, represents mystery, but also the divine kind of giving you an opportunity to take something, to get something and to stop basically moping. With the Seven of Cups, this is very strongly mystery, illusions, and having to trust your intuition because you can't see clearly what path to go for. With the Ace of Swords, again, this is that kind of initiation, that connection to the divine, that spark of something from the divine, and an idea. And ideas are short and brief unless you act on them and bring them into reality. So it's also that. This is brief heartache. You know, remember that the pain is short-lived, but the healing is forever. And that's what the clouds represent here. With the Five of Swords, once again, this is a reminder of short grief, short falling outs, in the sense that, yeah, it hurts in the moment, but you'll recover. And it also represents the kind of speed with which this argument escalated as well. And the clouds also represent that dissipating feeling. So, like, you could have been really heated in an argument, and then once the argument's over, you're like, oh, I kind of feel bad about that, or like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And it's like the clouds are now evaporating and fading away, because it's like you don't have those same strong feelings when the clouds were like full. So it's also that. Next up, we've got the Page of Swords. And so here what we're kind of seeing is, again, guidance from higher realms, but being a little bit off in some of these, with the sword pointing sideways rather than upwards. Mystery of the future and having to trust your intuition. In the Knight of Blades, this can represent short journeys in the sense that the night is fast, the night is speedy, and so for that reason this situation will be resolved very, very quickly with the clouds. And also divine protection, divine guidance, trusting in the divine, and mystery in terms of what the outcome will be. With the Queen of Swords, this is very heavily divine guidance, divine connection to higher powers, and a connection there with your intuition. The same goes with the King of Swords. All of these clouds are that divine connection, being really in tune, really intuitive. And with the Ace of Coins, once again, it's a little bit of mystery of the future, like you've kind of got this spark and this place this seed to kind of grow from, to grow your wealth, and it's in the future, but you don't know what the future holds, which is why this is a bit of a mystery, because it also depends on the actions you take and where you go from there. Next up, we have the symbol of the Crayfish, which only comes up in one card, which is the Moon card. And for those of you wondering, this is a crayfish here, but these two cards don't actually have the symbol in it, but that's as close as you're going to get to the symbol over there. So crayfish are really interesting actually, because they represent regeneration, also intuition, growth cycles, trusting your instincts, because the Moon card is a very intuitive card, and so they had to have animals that, or what do you call it, an animal? I don't know. Aquatic life that represents these sort of symbols, you know, intuition, growth cycles, things like that. So that is why the crayfish pops up in the Moon card. So that's a quick one for you. So next up, moving away from creepy little sea creatures, okay, we've got the Cross. And this comes up in the Hanged Man card, the Hierophant, and the High Priestess. In the Ghost Tarot deck, the Cute Ghost Tarot, the Teacher is the Hierophant. And the Cross represents everything you could think a cross does, which is of course sacrifice, because of the biblical influences there. It also represents spiritual connection, divine protection, and the intersection of the material and spirit realms. So like that kind of crossover, because, you know, with a human dying on the cross but then coming back to live later. So it's like that connection between the spiritual and the living. Also, what the cross has come to represent to people as like a spiritual connection between them and their religion, and the religious figures in that religion as well. When we have the Hanged One, how the cross is kind of coming into that is that this is divine intervention. You are divinely being put on a timeout, basically to sacrifice your time, sacrifice your progress in order to see something differently, in order to change your perspective. So you're getting a little bit of divine intervention here with the Hanged One. With the Hierophant, of course, the Hierophant is utilizing the cross. They are someone who represents the spiritual world and connection, and so they are almost a conduit for the spiritual connection and divine protection and divine voices to kind of come through and spread a message. And with the High Priestess, of course, this is another very spiritual card. So the cross in this instance, which is on her apron chest thing here, her cloak, this is representing, once again, she's another figure who is really divinely connected, spiritually in tune. She represents the connection between the material and the spiritual world. She has that kind of balance, which is what these two kind of poles are here. So that's where the cross is kind of coming in there. Okay, so our next symbol is the crown, and this turns up in quite a few tarot cards. So out of the major arcana, it turns up in the Empress and the Emperor, the Justice card, the Death card, Chariot, Tower, the Hierophant, the High Priestess. And in the minor arcana, it turns up in all of the Queen and Kings across the suits, as well as the Four of Pentacles or coins, and the Ace of Swords. So of course, the reason why this symbol turns up in all of these cards is to symbolize a sense of authority, leadership, regality, also a sense of achievement. It's also about embracing your power and your worth. And so, of course, that's why that comes up across all of these cards. So because the crown is a kind of self-explanatory symbol in the sense that it symbolizes authority and achievement, as well as regality, inner sovereignty, embracing your own power and your worth, and yeah, just being a very important figure. It's pretty self-explanatory across all of these cards. For that reason, I won't really go into the detail as to what they mean to each specific card per se, but you know, I just let you know that that is what that means, and that's why that's coming up in all of these cards. Next up, we have the symbol of the cups, which comes up in the major arcana, the Star, Temperance, and the Magician, and also, of course, all of the cups. So cups represent a few different things. So typically they just represent what we already know the cups to represent based on the suits. So emotions and intuition, our subconscious feelings and connections with others as well. So when they're coming up in the cups, it's talking about feelings. And we already know this with all of these cup cards. So I want to kind of skip straight to the major arcana, because the cups here are talking about, especially with the Star card, intuition, inner connection. With Temperance, it's a balance of the emotions, all the emotions blending into one to be harmonious. And with the Magician, the cup is representing a balance between the suits, with the cup being an element of that balance, to have the emotions and the emotional intelligence and depth and intuition and connection. Next up for our symbols, we have the Desert. So this comes up in 3 tarot cards, the Page, Knight, and King of Wands. And the desert can represent a few different things. So it can be about solitude, because you think of like a vast open desert, purification and inner reflection and clarity, as well as introspection. So when we have that in the Page, Knight, and King of Wands, we can see that these figures are all quite contemplative, they're thinking about things, they're doing a bit of introspection, and you can see that very clearly. With the Knight of Swords, you can kind of see here that the desert is more so representing a sense of solitude, because you know the Knight is alone there, but also a sense of inner reflection and clarity. And the King represents all of these things. You know, the King is a person in solitude, they are alone, they do introspection, and they are doing a lot of inner reflections and trying to build that clarity as well. So for the King, it's all the symbols of the desert kind of apply here. Okay, and our next symbol is the Dove, which only turns up in one card, and that is the Ace of Cups. And the Dove, of course, symbolises hope. So in terms of the Ace of Cups, that's hope and love. It also represents like peace as well, so peace and love. There's also a sense of like divine communication, as well as, because it's coming down from the sky, and all birds represent divine communication regardless of what bird it is in the tarot, as well as like higher realm messages because they're bringing a message from above, but also pursuit of serenity as well. So that's why it's in the Ace of Cups, and here it is delivering that message that we had with the circle earlier of that wholeness and unity, and they're delivering that straight from the divine. So that's what that means. Okay, so the next symbol we have now is the dragon. So that only comes up in the Seven of Cups in tarot. It comes up in one of the cards, so you can see it over here, but in this deck they've used a snake, and over here there's a snake up there, but in the cup that usually has the dragon, there's some money. So it doesn't always come up in tarot, but it's nice to see it from time to time. Usually you'll see it in the traditional decks. And the dragon is, of course, if you think of like that fire-breathing dragon, they're powerful. You know, they're a big presence. They're powerful. They are representing that inner fire within you that can come out. They represent embracing your inner strength and harnessing your potential, harnessing that power that you have. And they're also about transformation as well. So in the Seven of Cups, these are kind of like little warnings, I guess, little illusions. And it can be about a little bit about greed in the Seven of Cups, because also if you think of a dragon, they're kind of like hoarding wealth, hoarding money sometimes in some sort of stories. They can represent that. And so there's kind of a dual-edged thing going on here, in my opinion, where it's kind of like, are you being greedy, or is it that you have an illusion has kind of been shone on you? Because if you think of greed in reference to the symbol of a tarot being about your inner power, your inner strength, harnessing that and that transformation, maybe that greed is people telling you that you need to cool it down, you shouldn't really let that side out of yourself, that power, you shouldn't flaunt it or show it, but actually like it's something that's not wrong with flaunting or showing at all. And so maybe there's been a bit of disillusion there. So that's something to consider as well when you see the dragon in the Seven of Cups. Next up we have the symbol of the eagle, which only shows up in two cards of the tarot, which is the Wheel of Fortune and the World card. So right here you can see the eagle in the two Wheels of Fortune. You can also see the eagle here in this one World card. And so eagles represent a few different things. They represent vision and freedom, sort of like rising above your challenges, but also getting that kind of omniscient point of view, or that like bird's eye point of view of a situation. You're kind of getting to see all the sides to a story. In that sense, it's kind of also representing spiritual perspective, because it's a perspective that ordinarily as a human you wouldn't get access to all four sides, but here you're getting all access to all angles of a situation, which implies like spiritual perspective. And definitely when it's talking about overcoming challenges, it's because you're able to soar above. So usually mountains are a symbol of challenges in tarot, but if you're an eagle, you can just soar above that. So you can soar above challenges and gain clarity as well from situations. Especially if the bird is perched, it does represent more of that clarity, more of that like peace. But when they're flying, it's more that divine connection, seeing things from all angles, getting that spiritual side. So that's what's coming in with the Wheel of Fortune, whereas with the World card it's more about that clarity, perspective, point of view, that sort of thing, and freedom as well, freedom to make your choices. Okay, so our next symbol is the feather. So I've actually noticed this does come up in a lot of cards in my decks, but traditionally it only comes up in the Nine of Cups, the Knight of Swords, and the Page and Knight of Wands as well. So feathers are really cool because they represent a few different things. They represent, of course, divine connection, because if you think of like an angel, for example, not your traditional stereotypical angel, but more of our kind of like softened version of like an angel, you know, they would have wings. So a little piece of that kind of angelic or divine connection. They represent like spirituality for that reason and ascension. They also represent like messages from higher realms, because again, it's the same as the bird. This feather is floating down from nowhere and delivering a message to you. And it's also about the delicate balance and nature of life. So when we see this feather, usually in the hat here, in the Nine of Cups, because this is quite a happy, positive card, and it's about somebody moving almost from one phase to the next. The feather here definitely represents that like ascension, or that like, you know, traveling through something, and to do that you kind of need that spirituality or spiritual guidance or the connection with the higher realms. And it's also about the fragility and the delicateness of life as things change and grow and, you know, move forward. In the Knight of Blades, usually you would see the feather on the back of their helmet. So you actually, all of these do have one. So here, again, this is representing that connection with the divine, with the sword kind of piercing up to the sky. You're getting this strong sense of divine connection, divine pursuit, like divine intention here, divine guidance. Divine messages coming to you during this moment for you to make a good decision. And of course the delicate nature of life, because knights usually don't last very long. Typically in the stories, in the tales, they're supposed to be a bit of a martyr, you know. So here we see the feather in the hat there, but this one doesn't have one. And that's in the Page of Wands. Again, same thing. It's that spiritual connection. The reason why the feather is kind of pointing direct up in this one is that it's directly telling you during this phase of introspection, this Page of Wands is receiving higher divine messages. And then we've also got the Knight of Sticks. So here are the feathers. But what's quite interesting is in these two versions of the Knight of Wands, their feathers are fire, because they're really driving home the fire energy of this card. So the Aries, the Sag and the Leo, they're driving home the fiery nature of this. And so here you could kind of see the feathers as a really strong spiritual power, like a really, really strong one, and almost like you've been given like the perfect ammo you could possibly need from the divine, like the perfect kind of messaging. Maybe more of an enlightening message. Okay, so our next symbol is the fish. And this comes up in the Page, Knight and King of Cups. Of course it will come up in the cups because the cups are the water suit. So of course that's Pisces, Cancer and Scorpio. And fishes are associated with that because of course water. Fishes are in the water, but also the Pisces symbol is the fish. The Cancer is the crab. Scorpio is a scorpion for some reason. I don't think, hot take, Scorpio shouldn't be in the water signs. But anyway, back to what I was saying. The symbol of the fish is quite interesting because it represents abundance. They represent fertility and hidden insights because obviously they're below the water, they're hidden, so they're quite hard to find. And they also represent the subconscious and deep emotions because that's what the water represents, and they can go deep into the ocean, so that's why they represent this as well. So they're coming up in the Page and the Knight and the King because these are really deeply emotional cards. Like they're about you connecting deeply with yourself, and they're about abundance now as we're reaching those sort of regal titles of a Page, a Knight and a King. We're reaching that abundance. We're reaching a point where you're learning about yourself, especially in terms of your subconscious and your emotions, and you're finding really strong balance. The reason why the Queen is kind of left out of that is because she is a great balance of emotions, but she's very like unpredictable, I suppose, untamable, so a little bit different from the Page and the Knight and the King. Okay, so our next symbol is the flag, which only turns up in 2 cards in tarot. So it turns up in the Death card here, and usually in the Judgment card it would turn up kind of just underneath the trumpet that the angel is using to communicate with people. And flags can represent lots of different things, not only in tarot, but in real life these symbols are also like quite universal. But it can represent self-identity. So for example, you know, if you wore a pride flag or carried a pride flag with you, you could view that as self-identifying as a member of the pride group, or it represents a set of beliefs. So even if you're not a part of the LGBTQ plus community, but you want to show your support, you could also, like, you know, hold that flag or carry that flag. So in that sense, it represents self-identity, but also self-beliefs. It can also represent your intentions, because, you know, you've got like the white surrender flag that represents your intention to surrender, your intention for peace. It also represents standing for your beliefs as well, because you're announcing something, like you're declaring something, you're showing this flag, which is showing that you're standing with the beliefs attached to that flag, or the intentions attached behind that flag. So it sort of conveys a purpose, also allegiance as well. The fact that you might, if you saw someone with another LGBTQ plus flag, you'd be like, oh amazing, we're a part of the same community, and sort of forming allegiances there. And so when we have that in the death card, you can see this as a declaration of intention, maybe a declaration of peace, of surrender, because there is like a poppy here on this flag. So rather than requesting to sort of going into this fight guns blazing, because they're on a horse, this person is clearly a knight in the death card, instead they're going at it with more let's be peaceful, or to avoid bloodshed, especially with that poppy there. And with the judgment card, having a flag beneath the sort of instrument they're using to communicate with you shows that they're trying to communicate an intention. They're also forming an allegiance with you, this person of judgment. So that's how that can kind of come up in tarot. Amazing. So our next symbol is going to be the flame. And the flame pops up in 3 cards in the tarot. So that's the Devil, the Lovers, and the Tower. So flames, of course, as you could imagine, represent illumination, you know, because of the light there, but also transformation and potential change, because flames are constantly moving and changing shape and changing form and growing. They can spread very fast. So we've also got that. And then as well as a little bit of like inspiration and creative spark, because it's like snap, that spark that comes in that's really creative, that makes you have an idea or feel inspired. And so where it comes up in the Devil card, which is here, you can see he's pointing it downward, which could indicate a lack of illumination, a lack of knowing your way out of being chained from this situation. It can also represent feeling a lack of inspiration or a lack of change, because as I've said, you know, the flame, if it's change and transformation, he's pointing it downwards. It means you're struggling to change, you're struggling to transform from this situation that you're finding tough. So usually in the Lovers card, you would see a tree sort of engulfed in flames. I think the closest we're going to get is this one, because over here you can see the leaves are much more uniform and they're on branches, so we can imagine that this is representing flames here. So in this sense, with the tree sort of engulfed in flames, this is representing passion and desire. And typically there would be 12 flames on this card that represent the 12 zodiac signs, which is kind of conveying a sense of time and eternity and an eternal love, essentially, an eternal attraction towards each other. And next up we've got the Tower card. So with the Tower in flames here, of course, knowing what the Tower card is, with the chaos and the change and transformation, the flames are emphasizing that change, that transformation. It's representing seeing something differently with illumination. It's also representing a little bit of the chaos, because flames are of course uncontrollable. They can get out of hand, they can grow very quickly, they can get whipped up until they're much bigger than they are. So it can also represent things getting out of hand and things being quite drastic and dramatic and big. Okay everybody, voiceover Katie here, just doing the outro. So that was it for tarot symbols for part 4. There are going to be more parts because I'm not through all the symbols yet, but hopefully you found that useful. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe. And if you want to check out any more tarot symbol videos, I'm creating quite the collection on my channel, so feel free to check those out. And if not, I hope to see you here next week on Tuesdays and Thursdays for another tarot reading or tarot related video on Team Tarot. Bye!